Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to, cut through the noise and get to the heart of critical stories using key sources. Today, we're focusing on a really urgent situation in the Middle East, specifically in Suwayda Governorate. Our main source is a report dated July 16th, 2025, called Assyrian Monitor. Suwayda under the fire of genocide and sectarian ethnic cleansing. This comes from the Assyrian Monitor for Human Rights. They do a lot of important work, particularly through their Voice from the East initiative, focusing on Christian communities and other minorities in the region. And right off the bat, the report sounds an alarm, doesn't it, about violence escalating sharply around July 14th.
It does, yeah. There's a real sense of urgency from the very beginning. They pinpoint Monday, July 14th, 2025 as the start of this major escalation.
And they're specific about who's involved. It's not vague.
Not at all. They name armed groups linked to pro-regime militias, specifically mentioning units from the, quote, Syrian Army, Ministry of Defense, and General Security Forces from the Ministry of Interior.
Okay. And these groups are accused of what exactly?
The report says they launched brutal attacks targeting innocent civilians, not military targets, civilians, across several villages in Suwayda.
Right. So the Monitor is saying this isn't just like some isolated clash or random fighting.
No, definitely not. That's a key point they make right away. They frame it as part of a systematic and pretty dangerous strategy.
A strategy. What's the stated goal of this strategy, according to the report?
The aim, as the Monitor puts it, is to subjugate the local communities there, specifically communities that reject the forced military and political control being imposed by the authorities.
Subjugate. Okay, so it's about crushing resistance, essentially.
That's how the report presents it, yes. A deliberate campaign, not just unrest. And they don't see this happening in a vacuum either.
How so?
Well, the report explicitly links this violence in Suwayda to a pattern of previous incidents elsewhere in Syria.
Sure. What examples do they give?
They mention specific, quite brutal events. The bombing of St. Elias Church in Damascus, attacks in places like Jaramana and Sanaya, and also these widespread repression campaigns in Syria's coastal regions.
So they're connecting the dots here.
Exactly. They're using these past events to argue that this isn't new. It's a recurring tactic, a pattern of violence deliberately aimed at civilian populations.
Okay, so we have the facts as reported, targeted attacks, specific perpetrators, a link to past violence. But the Assyrian Monitor goes further, right? They draw some pretty strong conclusions about what this all means.
They absolutely do. It moves beyond just reporting events into interpretation and, frankly, condemnation. They call these state-driven policies and argue they're actively inflaming sectarian divides, making the suffering in Syria even worse.
State-driven policies.
Yes. And then comes the heaviest part of the report, their core conclusion.
Which is?
They state that the recent crimes committed in Suwayda amount to acts of genocide and ethnic religious cleansing.
Wow, okay. Genocide and ethnic religious cleansing. Those are incredibly serious terms, legally and morally.
Extremely serious. And the report uses them deliberately. They're not just talking about violence, they're talking about intent.
Right. Genocide implies trying to destroy a group, and ethnic cleansing, forcing them out.
Precisely. Forcibly removing a specific group to make an area ethnically or religiously homogenous. The report is arguing these actions are a deliberate attempt to fundamentally change Suwayda's makeup. It's a profound accusation.
So this isn't just about local conflict then, it's bigger.
Much bigger, according to the Monitor. They frame it as an existential threat.
An existential threat to whom or what?
To Syria's diverse social fabric itself. They argue these actions undermine the very possibility of a diverse, cohesive Syria. And they point out the timing, saying this is happening when Syria should be moving towards pluralism, democracy, equal rights for everyone. But instead, these actions tear that possibility apart.
That really highlights the potential long-term damage they see here, an existential threat.
So, faced with findings this grave, what does the Assyrian Monitor say needs to happen? What's their call to action for these communities?
Well, given the severity, their call is quite stark. They demand immediate international intervention.
Immediate intervention? Why international?
Their reasoning is blunt. They state the current regime has shown time and again that it's unable, and they stress, unwilling to protect these vulnerable communities, especially from crimes that, in the Monitor's analysis, reach the level of genocide and ethnic religious cleansing.
So they see the state as either complicit or incapable of stopping it?
Exactly. So they're appealing directly to the international community, to human rights organizations globally and regionally for swift, decisive action. They're saying the world needs to step in.
And besides that immediate call for intervention, are there other demands? For accountability, maybe? Oh, absolutely. They cover that too. First, they offer condolences to the victims' families, wish recovery for the injured, basic human decency. But then, crucially, they demand an independent, urgent, and thorough investigation into what happened, into the bloodshed.
Independent investigation, that's key.
Very key. And alongside that, accountability for all perpetrators, not just foot soldiers, but anyone involved. And finally, they demand guarantees. Guarantees that these kinds of atrocities won't happen again. It's a full-spectrum call. Investigate, hold accountable, and prevent recurrence.
So recapping this deep dive into the Assyrian Monitor report, it paints a really alarming picture. Escalating violence in Suwayda described as systematic attacks.
Yes, with devastating implications for human rights, for Syria's diversity.
The report clearly expresses deep worry that this isn't just a localized tragedy, but part of something bigger.
Exactly. They explicitly state that these actions perpetuate chaos, they foster more violence, and they just, well, destroy any chance for coexistence or national reconciliation in Syria. It's about a pattern that undermines the future.
When you put it all together like that, the detailed allegations, the use of terms like genocide, the call for international action, it leads to a pretty profound question for us and for you listening.
It really does. Given everything the Assyrian Monitor lays out these specific accusations of genocide and ethnic religious cleansing, the urgent plea for the world to step in, what does this report compel us to think about? What is the responsibility of the global community when faced with what an organization on the ground describes as an existential threat to a nation's people and its social diversity? How do we respond to calls to uphold human rights in such dire circumstances?